Welcome to the Amanda Anderson Show. The following program explores life from a pro-life perspective. The information shared is for educational and advocacy purposes and does not constitute legal or medical advice.
The science is clear. The pro-life movement is rooted in medical reality. This truth is silenced by the media and political spectrum, so people think that this truth is hateful in some form. But in truth, it is not. Welcome to the Amanda Anderson Show. Brought to you by Pro-Life, Pro-Reality. Welcome to the Amanda Anderson Show. I'm your host, Amanda Anderson, and I am here in the studio with my co-host, Cassidy Martin.
Good to be here, Amanda.
In today's show, we are going to discuss the misinformation on these issues taught to our nation's children, specifically regarding news and talk shows that are on in the home, as well as education platforms supposedly created for children, and the impact of these views on people who were given to the public uncritically. To start the show, I want to address the common narrative from the mainstream media, which is calling it an attack. Clip 1.
Telling us the right to an abortion is directly under threat. ACLU attorney Bonsitu Kitaba speaking out about a new lawsuit just filed on behalf of Planned Parenthood.
We have been living under federal protections for the last 50 years, and those protections are ready to go away.
Kitaba says if Roe v. Wade is gutted, the 1931 law in Michigan banning abortion will be reinstated.
Doctors, nurses, practitioners could face felony convictions and charges for providing safe abortion care.
The words used really do matter. If children hear the words under attack or similar terms, they will instinctively see it as an injustice or something that is wrong, when, in this case, the injustice is the child being murdered in the abortion.
What is under attack in this situation is the people and the outlets that promote reality, which is completely backwards.
The ACLU suit in the Court of Claims against the AG's office is asking the state court to issue a declaratory judgment, saying once and for all, a woman has the right to choose. Currently, several local prosecutors and AG Dana Nessel have said they will not prosecute such cases.
It's not our business why women make this choice.
At the same time, the governor filing her own suit in County Circuit Court.
There are unique powers that I'm using right now. One is the power to bring a lawsuit on behalf of the people of Michigan to protect a constitutional right. And the second power is one to ask the Supreme Court to take the case directly.
When our children hear the wording being used in these news broadcasts, they instinctively are made to think that something is wrong, or they will experience a loss of rights or power, when in reality these sources have it backwards. And the so-called power would never have been awarded in the first place if the ones who decided to give it cared at all about having their facts straight and grounding their argument in actual reality.
It is not a right that was taken away. What happened was that it has been made a lot harder for someone to commit an injustice and violent act of murdering the absolute most vulnerable members of society among us.
Let us now hear a part of the story of Rebecca Kiesling from that same news broadcast to understand the pro-life views of those whom the news very regularly silences.
My birth mother was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. She went to 2 illegal abortions and I was almost killed.
When you look at the suit that's been filed, what goes through your mind?
It's very upsetting. The 1931 abortion ban is the law which protected me. I literally owe my birth to that law.
Kiesling says there's good reason this effort hasn't progressed at the state capitol, and she fears what might happen if those lawsuits prevail. She's convinced the governor and Planned Parenthood are working together despite filing separately, a view shared by another state lawmaker.
I'm just as worthy of love and life as anyone else, and I think it's very elitist to say that only people who were planned should be here.
The rape of her mother is indeed a grave injustice, and something that needs to be taken seriously, and that rapist should very well be prosecuted to the fullest extent.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, as Kiesling pointed out, she is no less worthy of life than anyone who is planned, and the circumstances of her conception should never mean that she is not worthy of life, protection, and love.
We turn now to Stephen Colbert's Late Show on CBS. Clip 2.
And what the court appears to be doing now is mandating its own moral code. Of course, they might argue, no, we didn't. We specifically ended our opinion by saying we returned the issue of abortion over to the people's elected representatives. Have you met the people's elected representatives? I have. Louis Gohmert is one of them. I'm not sure if he knows where babies come from.
It is not about a moral code, it is about what has a foundation in scientific and medical reality, and what does not.
And does Stephen know where babies come from? He would not be advocating for the things he is if he did.
But even the fact, you feel that? You can hear me now? And then you see it, But even the fact that we got a leaked copy almost 8 weeks ago did not emotionally prepare the country for last Friday's seismic shift in the political landscape. Because with this ruling, for the first time in history, the Supreme Court has eliminated an established constitutional right involving the autonomy to decide what happens to your body. And having more personal rights is kind of America's whole thing. We invented it.
Well, sure, Stephen. However, if the people who spoke out about this looked to reality first, they would see that the personal rights should begin with the child in the womb's right to live, and not be murdered in an abortion.
Turns out, taking away rights from half the people in the country wasn't popular with the people in the country. This weekend, protests erupted everywhere from Washington, D.C. to New York, San Francisco, Denver, Boston, Philadelphia, even Salt Lake City. Look at that crowd in Salt Lake City. Do you know? Do you have any idea how hard it is to be too conservative for Utah? They think jazz is basketball. That's true. It's based on a true story. In fact, in recent polls, more than 8 in 10 Americans believe abortion should be legal to some degree. But we know majorities don't matter. That's how you get this Supreme Court.
The majorities do not matter if the common consensus is factually flawed.
And this being on in the home in front of children is a large culprit of the belief in these lies, because of how impressionable children are. Switching gears here, we turn to a clip from NBC News Now, from January 20th, 2023, discussing the 50-year mark after the Roe v. Wade decision. Clip 3.
Well, I think it's really astonishing to even think that on the anniversary of what should be an incredible celebration of our abortion rights protected by Roe versus Wade, we are here in outrage and resistance. And let me begin by saying it is a sorrowful decision. It is not a decision that is supported by 85% of this country. It's a fringe decision by, in my opinion, a very illegitimate court.
It would have never been called a, quote, sorrowful decision if education on abortion had been grounded in reality and actual biological and scientific facts.
It's a case of the uneducated teaching the impressionable.
So I want to begin there. I have lived through a time, I was 19, 50 years ago, and I lived when I was young where there weren't abortion rights, and I know what women lived through and what it was like to feel like you had no bodily autonomy.
Having a child or not, in this case, is not personal autonomy, but is a case of whether your already living son or daughter continues to live or is horrifically murdered.
If wombs had windows, abortion would be unthinkable. The life being unseen is a very large part of this misunderstanding and lying.
You couldn't make decisions over your own choice, over your own body, over your own decision to have a child or not have a child. And I will say for myself, I was a person who grew up in a very difficult, violent family. I was not in good shape when I was 18 years old. I had really lost my way. I was into drugs and alcohol. I was a mess, and I got pregnant. And had I not been able to have an abortion at that point in my life and the life of that child would have been fundamentally destroyed.
When a woman is pregnant, it is no longer selfishly only about the mother alone.
Yeah, and a mother referring to her own baby as a burden is abusive and despicable.
And all issues described could be solved if access to truth, as well as adoption access, were made a priority.
with the possibility of how many others who physically cannot be a mother and father because of health or other related problems, but would love to be, adoption access should be the top priority for mothers who don't think they can raise a child, not abortion.
The one thing that we have really recognized is that the true reality is that abortion has always been a medical necessity throughout all of history, and that will not change. That truth will not change with abortion bans and regulations and restrictions. We've just seen that patients are really bearing the significant burden of these decisions that politicians and lawmakers have made.
Murdering a child is in no way a necessity. That is line number 1 from her.
Right, murder is not a necessity. It has just been twisted by the media, like we are talking about today, so people believe that, but that is a lie.
Another large lie, primarily told to our nation's young girls now that Roe v. Wade was struck down, is the saying, quote, "The government is now in charge of your pregnancy." This is complete misinformation.
The government is not in charge of citizens' pregnancies. They are just drawing the line at what the woman can or can't control at the new life in the womb, rather than in another place. This is equivalent to the government having a law against shooting someone who posed no lethal threat to you over a bodily right you believe you have, to use your body to control that gun in any way you see fit.
And in both cases, your belief in that bodily right is completely factually flawed in the first place. Another thing that was invented by a society that has failed to educate itself is the pronoun games. It now gets forced down children's throats in every direction, even if it is contrary to the parents' values and teachings that are instilled in the home.
The core of this is people so scared to make waves that they blindly support things that are factually flawed.
I cannot correctly identify myself as a man, or seemingly with no gender at all, any more than a 10-year-old can correctly identify as 21, and purchase alcohol.
That fake ID that the child possesses is just as much a change of reality as those potential surgeries. And it regularly does way more harm, because it fails to address the underlying issues.
What would truly be loving in that case is to actually get to the heart of why somebody feels this way, and help them see and be led into alignment with reality.
What society wants us all to do in this regard is to accept people in the lie, which is in reality just as harmful as telling someone with anorexia that they are doing what is right for themselves.
Pride events are seemingly designed with children in mind. In the scope that parents have zero effective way to regulate what is shown to their children in the moment.
And far too many of the performances are adult-centered.
These performances in front of children are designed to tell them that who they truly are, as proven by different forms of biology and other forms of science, is wrong, needs to be changed, or is something to be ashamed of.
And I would say they are being intentional about including children in the audience because of how impressionable young children are and how likely they are to view anything from an adult as the way things should be.
Another crucial point regarding misinformation is the concept of linguistic dehumanization. When children hear the common terminology used, like clump of cells or product of conception in things like seemingly updated biology textbooks, they are unlikely to view the unborn child for who they truly are and accurately notice their personhood.
Many children's educational materials only use the word baby after viability, or only after birth in most cases. This is an enormous lapse in what things truly mean. This is really a case of the biased individuals trying to teach impressionable children the truth, while failing to recognize that they have a harmful bias due to how they themselves were educated.
A major area where the education system falls short is that, when discussing these topics, it intentionally omits the scientific reality of the developmental stages.
The reality that has been widely failed to be touched on is the fact that a child who just so happens to be in the mother's womb is just simply at a different developmental stage than a toddler is to a teenager.
This fact is known to the true science of the issue, but is largely unknown in the educational system.
This bias is so dangerous and creates a generation that will not affirm life at stages in the womb, which leads to the promotion of abortions and the lies to take over.
A huge area where children are led astray is when the issue of abortion is framed as one-sided.
It's as if they only want kids to view it as a women's rights issue alone, so that is all they teach. This approach deprives the children in question of critical pieces that actually deepen the understanding of the truth.
Like the parents don't want their kids to turn out pro-life, so they tailor the information and never touch on that at all. The truth of it is that it is indeed an issue of life or death for the unborn baby, and throwing away a person's life cannot be justified by external factors.
And another thing is that the truth of it is if they actually portrayed the truth of it to children, it would come across like education about the Holocaust.
And rightly so, Cassidy. The estimated number of victims in the Holocaust is just 11 to 17 million people total, while the number of babies killed in abortions is estimated by the World Health Organization to be roughly 73 million worldwide in just 1 year alone. Another thing to point out is the echo chamber that is formed by many popular celebrities and influencers, which just reaffirms the factually flawed beliefs of people, especially children.
When our nation's children hear the pro-abortion beliefs from their favorite influencers or media celebrities they look up to, they tend to take them at their word and trust them based mainly on their popularity alone, rather than on more important factors.
Yeah, they view it as if the person is an actual good or reliable source. That is why it is so important for parents and guardians to vet these sources to make sure a rooting in the truth remains a household priority. Thank you for getting into the studio to discuss this today, Cassidy.
Thanks, Amanda, and thank you all for joining us on The Amanda Anderson Show. As always, you can tune in on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. And follow us on Truth Social, X, Facebook, and Instagram at Amanda Anderson PL, or, depending on the social platform, at Amanda Anderson PL and Amanda Anderson Show on Facebook. For more information, go to our website at peelnonprofit.wixsite.com/Amanda Anderson Show. Have a great day.
This podcast is for educational and commentary purposes only. We utilize clips from news outlets and public figures under the Fair Use Doctrine to foster public discourse on matters of legitimate public concern. This program is not authorized by any candidate or political committee. The use of third-party media is transformative and does not imply an endorsement or a commercial partnership. Views expressed are solely those of the hosts and do not constitute legal or medical advice. While we strive for scientific and factual accuracy, we recognize that the application of this information to public policy is a matter of intense political debate. Content is presented for educational purposes and should not be construed as medical or legal advice. Listeners are encouraged to consult primary sources and professional experts to form their own conclusions.